Hi everyone, it's Jenny Black. I'm back here with another watercolor video. This time I'm using a stamp by Stampendous. This one's called Nested Bird and it's number 158. I absolutely love this stamp. It's very easy to watercolor and also fun to use your Copic markers. So of course I'm going to like it because I can use either one of my products to color it with. Today I'm going to do a watercolor project and I'm going to use a couple different inks, and so I'm going to get started here. This here is another one that I did. This one here is more of a turquoise instead of a blue bird, so you can see the difference. Every time I do it, it comes out a little bit different, and I like every single time I do it. So let's see how this one turns out. What I did is, because I'm using water-based inks as my coloring medium, I did stamp it with StazOn ink. This is a waterproof ink and it won't bleed, so that's what I did, is I stamped it onto watercolor paper. So I am going to use Tim Holtz Distress ink pads as my coloring medium instead of using actual watercolors. So what I've done is I've actually taken my ink pads and I've turned them upside down onto a ceramic tile, and I've got my color onto the tile, and that's what I'm going to use for my coloring medium. I will let you know each time I change a color so that you will be able to follow along if you'd like to follow along with me. If you don't have the same exact colors that I have, that's okay. You can use your watercolors, you can use just about any kind of water-based markers or ink pads that you happen to have. So let's get started on this little guy. First, what I'm going to do is color the background, and I'm going to use broken china for that one. So I'm going to go ahead and wet my paintbrush and dip into my color and paint my background. I like to paint my background first because then it won't pull any color out of my image if I do it later. Later, if my leaves were already colored, I might bleed into that and then pull some of the color out, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and just quickly color through this, and I'll be back at you with it in a minute. And there's my background. So now we're going to get started on the nest, and for the nest I'm going to use a variety of colors. One, I'm going to use Vintage Photo as my main focal point, and then I'm going to use a little bit of Scattered Straw as my highlight. And I don't happen to have Walnut Stain ink pad, so I'm going to use Walnut Stain marker. I could do this one of two ways. I could either directly color my marker onto my paper, or I can actually take my Walnut Stain and I can just add it onto my palette and scoop from there and use it as my paint. So I'm going to go ahead and do it a little bit of both ways. If you follow along any of my coloring tutorials, you'll know that I usually color with hills and valleys. I turn everything into hills and valleys and layers and break down my image so that it helps me determine or build volume to my image. So I'm going to look at this nest and I'm going to determine what's the closest to my light source. My light source is going straight down onto my image. I always have that for my beginning classes because it makes it easy to remember. And so the closest thing to the front is what is going to get the most light source. And so that's going to be light, and as things go further away, it's going to get darker. So I break it down into hills and valleys. If you look at the center of this nest, I call that the top of the hill. And then as it goes down and further away, those are the valleys. Valleys normally get less light than the hill, and so it's darker down in here than it is on the top of the hill. And that's how I break my things down. So I'm going to take this Walnut Stain marker, and I'm going to go ahead and just add in a little bit of shading down in here with my dark color. I'm going to add my marker directly onto my paper. You do not have to do this. You can take it off the palette if you would like. But I want it nice and strong down in my shadows, and so I'm going to go ahead and just add it straight in with my marker. Many people call this faux watercoloring. I call it just watercoloring because actually you're coloring with water and ink, so it doesn't really matter. If you want to do this with your watercolors, that's a lot of fun also. So there is my Walnut Stain. Now I'm going to take some Vintage Photo ink right off of my palette, and I'm going to start working towards my hill, the top of my hill, and as I get to the top of the hill I'm going to work my way lighter and lighter. So I'm going to go right on top of my dark color here, working my way towards the center or the top of my hill. And now I'm going to pull it together in the center with a little bit of scattered straw. It's called scattered straw, and it's kind of a mustard color, so I'm going to use that. I was looking for the ink pad. Oh, here it is. Scattered straw right here. So I'm going to use that one. And I'm going to pull it together in the center with that. Leaving a bit of white space for my highlight. And that is my nest. So you can see how quick and easy that was. It's lots of fun. You can color a lot of images really quickly with this watercolor style or technique. Okay, I'm going to use my vintage photo and I'm going to color my branches. You can see it does not have to be precise. Just get some color on your paper and then you can pull it around. Okay, and so let's go ahead. I'm going to color on top of this walnut a little bit. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and color my bird. What I'm going to start off with is I'm going to use some barn red, and I'm going to put it down into the valleys of the breast of the bird. So again, I'm breaking down my image into hills and valleys, where the center breast of his chest is going to be the center or the hill. So I'm putting my darker color on the outside. Now going to worn lipstick, a lighter red, pulling it towards the center, and I'm already done with my red part of my bird. And so now I'm going to go back to my blue china and I'm going to do my bird itself. I'm also adding in a little bit of faded jeans. So it's broken china and faded blue jeans. I'm going to focus on the areas where the illustrator put the hash marks. That's where I'm going to put most of my color. I'm sorry, this is not broken china, this is faded blue jeans. I picked up the wrong color, but I like it, so we're just going to keep going with it. So I add everywhere where the illustrator added some hash marks. And I'm going to go my hills and valleys again, the side of his head. Be a little bit darker back in here. And so now I kind of have an outline of color. Now I'm going to hit my image with a damp paintbrush and just soften the edges, pulling a little bit of color out into the center. And now I'm done with my bird. And so I like my bird. If you like the hard lines, it's great. If you don't like those hard lines, you can just take a soft brush and you can just kind of dampen it a little bit and it will soften those lines to make them a little bit smoother. And so I like both ways. It depends what mood I'm in. So now I'm going to take a little bit of ripe persimmon and I'm going to paint his little beak. I think I had a little bit of red on my brush, but I'm okay with that. I think it looks cute. And now for my leaves, I'm going to take peeled paint. So peeled paint is going to be the main part of my leaf, and then I'm also going to add in a little bit of forest moss for my shading on my leaves. So I'm going to scoop into my green, and I'm going to add some color deep down in the bottom of the leaves. This is kind of a dry ink. It's not real wet, so it's not very diluted. I'm going to be able to pull it around a lot. I might not even need any of my dark shading color. You don't have to worry about staying in the lines. Just color along, and if you're outside the lines, that's okay. That's what's fun about watercolor. It doesn't have to all be inside the lines. Now I'm going to take a soft wet brush, just very slightly damp, and I'm going to pull the color around. If you didn't have enough color in there, you could have gone to a darker green and added just a little bit more green in there, but my ink was strong enough that I don't have to use 2 colors of ink. You just spread it around. You don't have to cover up everything, but I do like to soften my edges a little bit. If you want that darker color, you can take the forest moss and you can just add a little bit down in here. And so I think my leaves are all done. Now I'm going to go ahead and it looks like I missed a branch here, so I'm going to get that before I forget it. It's right here. Just color in my branch. You can fill in this little void areas with either some green or some brown. It doesn't really matter. Just kind of fill it in. Very forgiving image. And so now I'm going to, whoops, I found another leaf. Okay, so there's my leaf, and now I'm going to do my flowers. My flowers, I really like this picked raspberry. I think it's really bright and cheery, and I like this a lot, so I'm going to go ahead and pretend these are like cherry blossoms and use picked raspberry. So I'm going to add a little bit of that color onto each of my petals, leaving the center of my flower blank because I'm going to have a yellow center. I've done this with very bright pink flowers, and I've done it with very diluted pink where it was very pastel color and it was very pretty too. I've even done these as like little apricot colored flowers, yellow flowers. You can do it all kinds of different flowers, and it always turns out really pretty. So there is my pink, and now I'm going to go back around with a damp brush and just soften that. This is where you get that soft watercolor look, really quick and easy. Okay, that part's already done. And so now I'm going to take a yellow marker because I want the yellow nice and strong. I don't want it diluted, so I'm going to add it straight onto my paper. And now my image is pretty much done. So I absolutely love it. I hope you like it too. Please come back again for more videos. I do teach classes at mycreativeclassroom.com. So if you're interested, please join me, and I'll talk to you soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye.